Hello and welcome back to another episode of Moonee Valley Voices, the new local podcast where we shine a spotlight on the people and businesses that make our community thrive. I'm your host, Matthew Galea, and today we're diving into the world of business, networking and strategic growth with someone who knows it inside out. Joining me is Jordan Leask, a highly experienced commercial leader, entrepreneur. He is the director of Leask Consulting and co-founder of Business Essendon, a network dedicated to helping local businesses owners connect, collaborate and grow. So Jordan, welcome to the show and thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's dive into, I guess, your links to the Moonee Valley first and foremost. So you went to school in the area and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
What are your sort of memories of Moonee Valley as a kid and growing up?
Yeah, like yourself, I've grown up in Moonee Valley and been in the region my whole life. Grew up in Moonee Ponds and Essendon. Some early memories would even be in the mid-'80s, which is before your time, when Essendon won a couple of premierships and there were like ticker tape parades down in Puckle Street.
Yeah.
And going to the footy there. I was lucky enough to go to Penley and Essendon Grammar School.
Yep.
And my father had a established automotive business in Mount Alexander Road in Moonee Ponds, and he was involved in Rotary Club of Essendon. So
Nice.
Fair to say our family's been involved in the Moonee Valley area all our lives, and to this day live in Strathmore and involved in local sport at Strathmore Football Club and some netball clubs, etc. So yeah,
how's the footy season shaping up?
In the juniors, you mean?
Yeah.
Pretty good. Strathmore's a really strong club.
Yeah, big club.
Coached there for 4 or 5 years. My youngest boy Archie's in the under 14s, and I absolutely love being involved in local sport and the community and what all that provides. But everyone's got their allegiances, whether it's Royals or Aberfeldy or other clubs. So, but that's what makes our region so special.
Lots of great clubs. And I know Strathmore, obviously, they got the whole returf done last year, which hopefully the club will get to enjoy this year. Yeah, be back at home at Lebanon Reserve. So
it's a pretty good ground now. So it's good for all the kids and the seniors. So
perfect. And I guess what is it about Moonee Valley that's kept you here all this time? Because it's one thing to grow up here, but you've chosen to do business in the area, work in the area. What's Moonee Valley sort of meant to you in that respect?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, and maybe a bit of a theme of today's comes back to relationships a lot of the time. So I think if you forge really strong relationships, you end up staying connected, and a lot of those are grounded in this region, and perhaps that's just organically with how that's happened. But when you've got family business in the region, you go to school here, you're involved, you've got a lot of experiences based here, being so close to so many things like the city, the arterials, airport, all of that stuff. There's probably not much of a reason to move. And then obviously meeting my wife, who's also local at the same time, and family, etc. So probably makes a lot of sense to stay in the area.
Yeah, cool. So we're going to talk a fair bit about Business Essendon today. So this is a new network that's sort of been founded for businesses in the area. It's got a little bit of a different take on the networking thing to some of the other networking groups that are out there. Do you want to maybe just share what sort of inspired you to start the network? I know you've done a lot of sort of business networks as part of your other roles in your career, but what were you trying to establish with Business Essendon?
Good question. I think primarily it came out of organic discussions with a lot of business owners that are just in my network. So some people might have seen me in various cafes in the North-West and having discussions. So a lot of that has to do with obviously the consulting side of the business, but also just keeping in touch and keeping relationships going. And then I think a theme that came out of that was a need for business owners in the region to connect with other business owners, understand who's in the region, what their capabilities are. Are there other opportunities by meeting other business owners that forge, new relationships, new client opportunities, etc. And involving this with Steve Alessio, who's well known to the region. Yep. We ended up putting a few people together just organically that resulted in different business and relationships being formed, and then we decided to formalise that, having a look at the area, and we might touch on this later, that it's such a growth corridor for the state, but also for business, and there's such a broad variety of businesses that are in the region. There's also nothing that really binds us together from a business owner perspective. So we wanted to focus on the business owner, business owners in the region and globally go through a lot of different things as you understand running your own business, and to be able to sort of bind that together in one community with a very specific purpose is the reason.
Yep. And I mean, it's not just about the businesses in the area. You might live in the area and run a business somewhere else. Obviously, there's a really diverse range of business owners in the area who, for whatever reason, might run their business somewhere else. So it's really just for business owners, whether their business is in the area or not?
Yeah, purely for it's dedicated for business owners that live or work in the North-West.
Yep.
So we have members that might be living in Strathmore, but they've got an accounting practice in the city, or they might actually have their workplace, or their factory or something might be in Tullamarine, etc.
Yeah.
But there's always that link to the North-West community.
Mm-hmm.
They're either involved in local sport and schooling, etc., or they've got business interest in the region.
Awesome. And so obviously networking's probably played a pretty key role in the growth of your own business, Leask Consulting, and the various other roles that you've held. I know you've obviously had a great career in sports and entertainment. Do you want to maybe talk about what you've done in that space and the role that maybe networking has played in either getting the roles and I guess the actual roles themselves?
Yeah. I'd probably say that it's one of the most important things that anyone could do, whether you're starting your career or you're already established and successful in business. For me, coming out of school, I was probably a little bit confused about what I wanted to do, and I just fell into what I loved, which was sport, obviously, and I always had an interest in business and the commercial side of business. So I combined both of those with a business management degree and grade diploma in sports. But where I fell over initially was not having enough experience or not knowing enough people to get that foot in the door to start your career properly. Yep. And in the sporting landscape, there aren't a lot of opportunities. It's changed dramatically now, but back in the late 90s or early 2000s, it was very different. So it took me a number of years to get enough experience to then get in there. So I ended up doing a variety of different sales-based roles in completely different industries, and probably learnt the hard way a lot about myself, which is important in sales, but also to build that experience. So then I was fortunate enough to work at TIXSTAR back in the day, which turned into Etihad Stadium and now Marvel Stadium. And that was in a commercial sales role, but that really opened me up to a world of hundreds of businesses of all different levels that wanted to entertain clients or grow their brand and business. And then what I learnt from that is dealing with directors, CEOs, etc., all that C-suite. I really learnt how they operate and how to manage them and what they value, and also what they're seeking out of every partnership or relationship or transaction that they're undertaking. So it gave me a great grounding from that perspective. And then what I've probably learned over the time is the importance of being authentic and being true to yourself, but also valuing relationship over everything else. So I tend to sort of go forward into any kind of engagement where I want to make sure that the intention's right and whatever we're doing together doesn't affect a personal relationship. So it's the opposite of being transactional in nature. And what that means is you maintain those relationships over time and other opportunities fall out of that, which I've benefited from certainly. So
in the context of like a Etihad Stadium type of role, what were you sort of looking to understand from your clients around, whatever Etihad Stadium had on offer? So I'm guessing this is like Medallion Club, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, a lot of it was based around like client entertainment.
Sure,
and then some brand partnerships as well. So often it's about finding the right fit for them to entertain clients, but I used to delve a little bit deeper to understand, okay, well, who are your clients? Try and understand them a little bit better so you can match what we're offering to help you achieve your objectives, rather than just the transactional nature of, I'm going to buy some seats and that's great. I tended to go a little bit deeper and try and understand their business a little bit more. And it always comes back to understanding people. So understand your customers and your staff. And if you're trying to form a relationship with someone, is try and learn things from their perspective and provide a solution to match it.
Because I'm guessing you would have had clients who would have been great connections for one another, right? So was it sort of like observing and thinking, well, you know, proactively, this other client of mine might be a really good fit to have a meeting with this client, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, that was probably a bit more secondary back then.
Yep.
There was a bit more of you make the sale, bank the number and, you know, hit your budget kind of thing. But as it evolved and you become more experienced and more established, and then you're also known for that a little bit, you end up facilitating some of those opportunities, I guess.
Yeah, and you mentioned you got to work with Essendon Footy Club as well, so I know you're a big Bombers man. So what was that like? Because I know, you know, I love my sports too, and you know, there was once upon a time I dreamed of working at Old Trafford with Manchester United, all this sort of stuff. Obviously, Windy Hill's around the corner for us, so it's a bit more maybe attainable, but without uprooting everything. So what was that like when you got to, you know, walk through the doors there and contribute to a club that you really love?
Yeah. It made going to work very easy, but it was when the opportunity arose, I thought I've got to do this. I can add a lot of value. Yeah, the club was coming out of the or in the middle of that drug saga, so it was a very interesting time, and it was probably not a good time on reflection to be in a commercial based sort of role. But as a lifelong Essendon supporter, it was just amazing to go to work there. Yeah. Often you can probably get too close to things. I did treat it as a job and part of my career, but there was a real passion and drive to make things better. Yeah. You meet some amazing people, like anywhere, and it was a fantastic experience. Got some great relationships there still too. Yeah.
So what have you sort of learned from working with these big names in sort of sports and entertainment that maybe you impart on your clients through, you know, Leask Consulting?
I think it really depends on what the brand actually is or what they're seeking. But I think first and foremost, it's about understanding how you can help them achieve their objectives, and that's the ultimate in business. So how can you be of service and then leverage all the things of benefit and package them up, you know, accordingly. So I would say it's more about trying to understand them specifically, whether that's a large brand campaign or it's a smaller transaction where a small business wants to entertain their most important clients at a specific game in a table of four or something. Yeah. The principles are still the same. And if you take that level of care and you understand them, you can provide the best solution, helps you build your own you know, integrity and trust and things like that, and you end up getting additional work out of it. So
obviously COVID was a really tough time in that industry. Can you talk to me about the transition that maybe occurred in your career during that time, and how you sort of overcame those challenges?
Yeah, well, I left Essendon and co-founded a marketplace for sports and entertainment packages called TIXSTAR, and that sort of grew over time in the initial few years until COVID hit. Yeah. And obviously, like every other business, you know, you're going from a certain revenue number to literally zero. And it stays there for some time. So that was a very stressful period. No help from government. It's not an industry that really was allowed to operate because you couldn't attend you know, events and all of that kind of thing. So
all the attention was really on just getting the sport on and making sure something could still be televised, but there wasn't much support for all the other aspects of sport that sort of came to it.
You're really at rock bottom.
Yeah.
You're actually probably further back than rock bottom. Yeah. So in those kind of crisis moments, it's important to reflect internally or sort of go within, and I'm sort of big on this, that you got to look then at, okay, so what do you have at your disposal and how can you be of value to your ecosystem? Yeah. So, you know, clients, suppliers, etc., and everyone that you've got touch points with. And there was a few things we had luckily to partner with a strong technology platform called Marketplacer. Yeah. Again, coming back to the relationship piece, we had really strong relationships. We were communicating all the time with, you know, clients and partners about the struggles they were going through. We realised we had a digital solution that we could provide and add some value in like an e-commerce based sort of setting. So you hear the word back then pivot all the time, which you get sick of all those buzzwords. Yeah. But it was a real mindset and adjustment change to survive, really. So similar to back with Essendon with the drug saga, you've got to adjust your outlook and your strategy and your approach to really get through, and comes back to being of value to whoever your ecosystem is.
Yeah. So with TIXSTAR, you sold that business, is that right?
I sold out of that business a few years ago, and then I moved into the consulting space.
Yeah.
Primarily helping business owners, with commercial growth, various projects and their business performance.
Yeah, just on the TIXSTAR, I think you're the first guest I've had on who's built a business and actually, ended up selling it. What was sort of what went into creating an asset or a business that was actually sellable, and when you're looking for that exit, what are the sort of things that you need to establish?
Well, with our situation, it was probably a little bit different. It wasn't like a pure exit and sale. It kind of morphed into something different in terms of like an event agency. But I think when you're going into something new and you're potentially thinking of an exit in mind, it's really important to have a lot of sort of back end things all lined up. So whether you're contracts with clients, you've got to have some stability in how you're operating, stability of income, etc. In the e-commerce space in particular, it can be a bit volatile depending on what that is. But there's a vendor and then there's a customer side to that kind of operation. Yes, it is scalable, but it also takes a lot of investment at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think generally speaking, it's about understanding the levers that you've got to pull to have the incremental growth all the time, and then you'll realise quite quickly where a business like that can potentially bolt on or be of value to other organisations.
Yeah.
And that's often where your exit or your strategy can come to fruition.
Yeah, awesome. And with Leask Consulting, what sort of clients are you working with at the moment? And I guess when you get your hands into a business, what are sort of the first things you're looking at, the first sort of easy wins or low-hanging fruit that you're looking to sort of get right?
Yep. A few in sport primarily, sport and a bit of tourism. And then I've fallen into professional services as well. I've got a lot of contacts in obviously accountancy and law firms, etc.
Yeah.
I think your question's quite broad, and it really depends on each individual one. Yeah. Some of them require more broader business strategy and direction. Sometimes a business owner might have developed and grown a business and reached a certain point where they're still operating in the day-to-day and really can't see either scalability of their business, other market opportunities, or they just need a strategic direction to align their whole team with. Yeah. Another one in sport was entering Australia and New Zealand market and needed a very specific sort of client acquisition, strategy. Yeah. In a very large part of the industry. So I just think they're all very broad and unique. I have had a couple that I have sort of suggested that I'm not needed and I'm not the right kind of fit as well. So if I can't add value to someone, whether it's something small, I tend to not go there a lot of the time. But generally speaking, I can always help with the commercial profitability or growth through even just looking at the ecosystem that they operate in, leverage some partnerships, look at their product and service mix, how they're going to market, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and obviously with Business Essendon, we're talking a lot about the B2B sort of networking opportunities that are out there. Where do you see the big B2B opportunities in the North-West business scene at the moment?
Well, if you look at our region, it's grown dramatically probably in the last maybe 10 or 15 years. And if you look at there's probably two things. There's the population growth, which has exploded, but that's obviously everywhere. So I call that probably population and migration. So I think there's also a large number of families that have moved over from or relocated from the east, as well as some come in from regional. Mm-hmm. And then you look at all the development. So even around here with a lot of high rises, Moonee Valley, townhouses, new builds, etc. You even look a little bit further up towards the development in like Essendon Fields and some of the industrial precincts, and it's all sort of spreading out. So there's more businesses than there's ever been in our region. There's a higher population than there's ever been, and there's more development investment. And as you push further out, there's more land and more opportunity. So there's a lot of factors at play from an infrastructure perspective, etc. And then you also look at the location being close to airport, arterials, close to the city. Yeah. it's very unique in that perspective. So we've got a lot of new businesses coming into the region. There's a lot of established ones. There's also new people living in the area that might have businesses outside of that.
Yeah.
So all of those factors mean that there's more opportunity. And I think what we identified with Business Essendon, even though it's in its infancy, is that there's nothing really that's binding everyone together properly in terms of having that stake in the ground that we are connected to the northwest of Melbourne. So I think there's opportunity for every kind of business, but you need to be very purposeful with what you're doing in your own networking activity in your own business.
Yeah, because I've sort of seen, there's like the trader associations that are very like geographically tied to a certain precinct or, very sort of smaller geographic area.
Yep.
But I guess what you're looking to achieve is that on a broader scale and bringing maybe those precincts together and looking for the opportunities that might exist for partnerships, for networking, for, new business to be done beyond those, very closer sort of precincts as well.
Yeah, the traders associations do a fantastic job in their area.
Yeah,
they're fantastic with how they support business and encourage trade and activity, which is great. They're very hyper focused for their space, and I think if you just take a step back and you think about how we live our lives and the business world in a global setting, it's gone global and digital very quickly.
Yeah.
What we're probably doing with Business Essendon is really trying to bring it back to that more hyper-local and more personal and relationship-driven. And you've got those traders associations, etc., but there always needs to be that common link that can bind people together. So there's that commonality of connection a lot of the time. And then I also think that our region has a lot of generational families. There's a lot of wealth, obviously, in the area as well.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that know a lot of people. And sometimes you've just got to be in the right playing field to open up some opportunities. And the role that we really are active trying to play is to really help business owners win and help open the door for them and do it with the right intention and do it for the right people.
Yeah. And so talk to me a little bit about the actual way the network will function, because I think that's one of the things that I really liked about when we spoke. There's a lot of respect in the way you've set this up for just how time poor business owners actually are. I've worked in other marketing roles in the past where, you've got maybe a partnership with an AFL club and they're inviting you to lots of different breakfasts and to get a table of 10 together can sometimes feel like a bit of a struggle, as much as you're trying to do the right thing and entertain and all that sort of stuff. But what I liked about what you were sort of talking about before we jumped on here was there's a lot of respect in there for just how busy business owners are and doing networking in a way that's really respectful of their time and ensures they're getting value out of the time that they do put in.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the time poor part. So if you think about what does every business owner have in common, they're time poor, which means that time is their currency. So all the really good business operators are just ruthless with their time and they manage their time according to what their priorities are. And that can be business, that can also be family and personal. So looking at a lot of the network-based groups or so-called networking groups, a lot of them are very time-consuming, they're very event-heavy, and they're very entertainment and experience-focused. So I just looked at myself and I thought, well, that's not something that I want to be doing. And what changed for me is a number of years ago when my kids were young, I wanted to be home with my kids at night time. I didn't want to be out and drinking and socialising. Having a luncheon during the day knocks out half the day completely. Yeah. So it's really based on two things for Business Essendon. It's quarterly business breakfasts that are first thing in the morning. Yeah. Usually probably a 7 till 9, something like that, 4 times a year where we bring the community together. So that's not only for networking, and that's about that sense of belonging, but it's also hearing from the best of industry. Yeah. So it's about learning and knowledge and development at the same time. And then outside of that, all of our facilitated connections, which are through individually done in the mornings, usually in various cafes or in offices and things like that. But they're done nice and early, done with a relationship and people first focus, and with a thoughtful approach, with good intent that we think that there's a bit of a match and a mirror. So that opens the door that I was talking about before. The events bring the community together, and it's not time consuming or a huge investment financially at the same time. So the value proposition is very strong, and if this ends up growing to where we think it can, it's something that really benefits the broader business community. Yep.
And then in between the quarterly breakfast, there'll be opportunities for members to connect and I guess potentially work with you on what those connections might look like and who within the network might be a good fit, which was another aspect that I quite liked as well, because a lot of networking is very incumbent on the member to do a lot of the heavy lifting and all that sort of stuff, which is good, and it can help develop those. But it's also good to have like someone, I guess, broker those meetings in a way that's a bit more warm and ensures that before we put all that time into it, that there is actually something worth pursuing here.
Yeah, and it's very easy, and similar to even the coffee that we had yesterday. It's just very organic in the way that flows. And at the end of the day, I think if you just put good people together, good things generally happen. Yeah. And just making sure it's not transactional in nature. So.
Yeah, awesome. And what's sort of the uptake? I know you've been having plenty of coffees the last couple of weeks, meeting business owners in the area.
Yeah.
Must be very popular at a lot of the cafes around town at the moment.
I don't know, I'm getting some weird looks in some cafes. they don't know my name yet, but they're sort of like, you're here again.
So what's the sort of uptake been like at the moment?
Yeah, it's been strong. I probably won't go into the full numbers just yet. It's been quite positive. We've just focused on our sort of more immediate based sort of network and like-minded people to start with. Yeah. And I think as we get going and there's probably a bit more content shared and we get through our first event coming up and all of that sort of stuff, I think the word of mouth will happen and it'll start to grow and develop. And we're quite positive about it. And for me, it's very much a passion project and something that's very enjoyable to be part of.
You mentioned earlier that Steve Alessio has obviously co-founded this with you, and you're in partnership on this. Steve's obviously very well known to a lot of people in the area. What's it? Yep. And you worked with him at Essendon, right?
Yeah, briefly. Yep.
Yep. So talk to me about that relationship and why he was sort of you two got together on this and
just very similar. I think he'd probably had similar thoughts. Very popular, well connected, that kind of thing. Yeah. And coming back again, the good intention, and having seen him in operation a few times, emceeing different events like the Royals or it's Essendon Footy Club or whatever. He's got a very unique flavour, which is very different, and people kind of gravitate to that in many ways. So at the end of the day, it's a people business, and you have good people involved like Sess and others. Yeah. You're going to win to whatever degree you can win by.
Perfect. All right, so we normally sort of wrap up with looking at some of our favourite places around the Moonee Valley. So you've been at a lot of cafes lately. Is there a place that has your favourite cup of coffee, or you don't want to offend anyone? I get a few answers to this one. So
the favourite cup of coffee is actually at home.
Right.
Believe it or not.
You've got the full setup going, or?
Yeah. My wife loves the coffee. She'll be happy with me saying that.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a few. There's East Pantry in East Keilor, Centreway, which is fantastic. Mama Lena's in North Essendon is always good. Yep. Chapter 4 on Keilor Road is excellent. Yep. Brunetti's in Moonee Ponds.
Yep.
Got to say North by North-West.
Okay. It's a cafe here.
There's quite a few, which is good.
Perfect. Well, you've named pretty much one in every suburb. So that shows you've done your research, which is good. A favourite restaurant in the area? Dinner spot?
I've got to say my 12-year-old Archie loves Hugo's in North Essendon.
Yeah.
So we're a big fan of that.
Perfect. Yep. Is there a hidden gem? Like, is there a business that you frequent that you think, far out, these guys deserve a little bit more love?
Like a restaurant, you mean?
Could be a restaurant, anything.
Probably Content Hype.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
I think I find inspiration probably from a lot of business owners, like
Yeah.
regardless of what level you're at, like you're out there having a crack.
Yeah.
Whether you're in your infancy or you're established. I've got a lot of respect for a lot of business owners in this area.
Yeah.
Some great people.
Well, that was my next. Was there a local business or entrepreneur that I know there's, you don't want to offend anyone, but is there anyone that like inspires you in particular, or that you'd give a shout out to? Or
how much time have we got?
Oh, we got as long as you need, mate.
I think there's probably too many, to be fair. There's some individuals that have been fantastic for me on a personal level that have got great reputations, very giving of both their time and their expertise. Others are unbelievable at networking and building businesses. I think this probably doesn't answer your question, but one of the themes that comes through with some of these exceptional people is every successful business owner, not just in this region but in general, are exceptional at relationships and how they value their staff, understand their staff, their clients, their suppliers, how they navigate that world. And you can just learn a lot from a lot of different business owners in that sense.
And I think that even when we were talking about lease consulting, there's that honesty and transparency that goes into, when you get an opportunity, maybe recognising it's not the best fit for you. And,
because it's not the best fit for them either. And there's no point doing that just for $1 in your, in your pocket. So that's really important. But that's part of, understanding yourself and your own integrity and what's important for you, and not compromising that for some other means.
I've probably covered my next question proactively, but I was going to ask if you could give one piece of advice to a business owner in Moonee Valley, what would it be?
Good question.
Join Business Essendon.
Come on the podcast. I think it would be more focused on valuing your people. So, or your people ecosystem. So, spend time building relationships with your staff. Don't just view them as workers. Make sure they're happy, they're aligned. Understand them individually. Show them that you do value them individually. Do the same with your client base. Spend some time there. Same with your suppliers. If you've got good relationships in all those sort of 3 areas, you can navigate almost any issue. And I know it's different for some business owners that have got maybe a different organisational structure and things like that. But if you spend that time, I've seen it in real time how really good businesses operate, and it's all based off that. So
and I guess if we were to point that more in the direction of any tips around networking, so if you're going to a networking event, what sort of advice would you give business owners to prepare for that event and make sure that they get more out of it than just maybe a free lunch or something like that?
There's probably a couple of things. I reckon one is, don't expect the sale or an outcome straight away. Like, don't be transactional. You can smell it a mile off. And some industries are different than others, but it generally never results in a good outcome for you. So you got to stay away from that, probably first off. I think second is just be your authentic self. So some people find it difficult in a networking setting to connect with people, and how do you introduce and the like. So that's something that we try and take away in Business Essendon, is almost do some of that work for you, because it just comes naturally. And probably the third one would be, are you in the right playing field? Meaning, are you in a tech meetup in a cafe in South Melbourne on a Tuesday night at 7:00? Or are you mixing with business owners in a particular industry segment or something that aligns with what you're trying to get out of? So probably ties into being clear about what your objectives actually are. And making sure that your activities align with that. The word networking means different things to different people, and sometimes it's not positive either. But it's just human connection. That's all it is.
Yeah, perfect. All right, so for anyone who's watching this and wants to maybe learn a bit more about Business Essendon or Lease Consulting, where can they go? Where do you want them to check it out?
For Business Essendon, you can find us on LinkedIn or email us at info@businessessendon.com.au, and same for lease.com.au as well.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Jordan, thanks so much for coming on and sharing some of your insights and a bit more about this exciting new network in the area. Pleasure to chat.
Thanks for having me on, Matt. And this is my first one officially done and dusted. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, yeah, you passed your flying colours. So that's another episode of Moonee Valley Voices all wrapped up. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check in next week for another new episode. Thanks.